Y'all, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at the Neca Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Nickelodeon 2012 Leonardo figure. This version of Leonardo first appeared in Season 1, Episode 1, Rise of the Turtles, on September 29th of 2012. He's the eldest biological sibling to his brother Turtles. He is the leader of the team. He's all about ninjutsu and constantly getting better at it. He's a perfectionist, often shows high levels of empathy, compassion, and mercy. He's also very adept at archery and using a shuriken. He also eventually masters a healing ability. He's also very into sci-fi TV shows and Saturday morning cartoons. And he also is right-handed. All right, so the box art looks fantastic. As per usual with NECA, they do a great job. But we're not here to talk about that. Let's go ahead and get this figure free from its plastic prison and see what we think about Leonardo. All right, y'all, fresh out the box, this figure looks fantastic. I mean, I am very, very happy with this figure and this line. I mean, it's got so much detail in it. It's ridiculous. Like, I keep seeing new stuff. They've got so much detail in the wraps, the knee pads, the straps, and just the shell alone is just insane. So many scratches and then just other details that are just there in the sculpt, but then also the paint that accentuates it is just outstanding. This is fantastic. And it's got a heft to it, which is great, that I always appreciate in action figures because it gives them like a substantialness, I guess, in my brain. Maybe that's just me. But again, that's probably more than likely due to the oversized feet, which is a hallmark for this series, and probably going to be one of my favorite things at the back half of this review, given that with the bigger, wider feet, you can get the figures to hold a pose a lot better, and I'm very excited to see what I can get into with that. Yeah, I think NECA nailed the look of this. Just from recollection, it looks spot on from what we saw on the show. They don't look super dirty, but they definitely don't look clean, which is awesome. Like, they look like you're not thinking that like you have a dirty figure, but they definitely have, like, especially, well, really just only on the wraps, there's a lot of like wash on them to where they look like they've been in the sewers, and so they look lived in, I guess you could say. But also the pads and the shoulder and elbow pads have like dings in them as well. And also in their shell, especially on the back, but also on the front a little bit. You can see some detail there where there's some marks that these are not pristine designs. Like, these are designs that are meant to look like they've had some experience. And I think NECA nailed it here. So this is really awesome. And like I said, I'm very excited to get into this review. So let's go ahead and get into it. Leonardo comes with 2 katanas, 2 interchangeable heads, 8 interchangeable hands, a turtle com, a slice of pizza, a smoke bomb, and the Microfission Omni Disintegrator. So according to Turtlepedia, this version of Leonardo stands at about 5 foot 1 inches tall, and I couldn't find anything about his weight. This figure of Leonardo stands at 5.5 inches tall and weighs about 4 ounces. Now let's see how he measures up to some other figures you might have in your collection. Here he is with the NECA knockoff colored bandana Mirage Comics Leonardo and the NECA 1987 animated series Leonardo. Here he is with the Playmates TMNT Classics Leonardo and the NECA Return to New York 4-pack Leonardo. Here he is with the TMNT Batman crossover Leonardo and my custom painted Playmates Nick 2012 Leonardo. Here he is with Hasbro's Marvel Legends Cyclops and Super 7's Donatello. Here he is with Jada Toys Mega Man and SH Figuarts Senkocho Seiho Kamen Rider Kuga. Here he is with Jada Toys Street Fighter Vega and Mattel's Masterverse Roboto. Here he is with NECA's Alf and Mattel's DC Universe Classics Gentleman Ghost. Here he is with Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection Red Ranger and Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat Baraka. Here he is with Figma's Link and Hasbro's Fortnite Shadow Meowscles. And here he is with Marvel Select Hulk and DC Direct Arkham Asylum Killer Croc. So for most of my Ninja Turtles fandom, I've been a Michelangelo guy. However, with the 2012 Nickelodeon series as well as the IDW comic book, somewhere in that time frame, I started to find myself becoming more of a Leo guy. And I'm pretty sure it has to do with the way that they skewed Michelangelo a lot younger. And I think they just made Leo a little bit less annoying than he had been in previous incarnations. Now, don't get me wrong. Original Mirage Leo is pretty awesome. And there has been versions of Leo that have been really cool. But for the most part, I think generally speaking, he had a Cyclops thing going on, which happens to leaders of teams in comic books often. And I could probably say the same thing for Cyclops around this time. So maybe it says more about me than it does what was happening in the books and the shows. But regardless, my Leo love was growing. And now that Neca has made this character into an action figure from this series and done such an amazing job at it, my Leo love is continuing to grow. I think that they really did a great job here with this Leo figure, and I am very happy to have it in my collection. The look, the detail, the colors, the sculpt, all of it just really pops and has so much nuance to it that comes from a lot of the blackwash and then like the scratches and subtle scuff marks and stuff. It's things like that that really, you wouldn't think that on paper that would make much of a difference, but this stuff makes these figures pop, and Neca did a great job accentuating all of that with these figures. And the subtle textural things on the wraps and the elbow and knee pads, and then the shell looks awesome. Everything about it just looks great. And then there's like subtle things on the skin tone that are like little spots here and there, and like they're very subtle and faint. At least on mine they are. And it just adds a dimension to the figure that is awesome. He was a ton of fun to play around with and pose and to get into different positions. Like I've said before, the large feet really help this line, and I absolutely love it because it just takes away some of the stress of getting the figures in dynamic poses without having to use figure stands and whatnot. And so I totally love that. And then he goes so well with pretty much everything. Like that's what the Turtles are really good at. They do blend in very well with a wide array of different action figure lines. There's just something about them that's really cool. And I guess like maybe that could just be me, because in the comics, like they're known to do crossovers and be in other things. And also in the cartoons, they did that as well. So they kind of have a history of blending in with other things. And I think this line in particular does a really good job of it, because it is based off of a cartoon, but it still has a look to it that isn't, it's not a comic look, and it's not an anime-esque kind of vibe to it. So it can kind of ride the line between different lines. It can ride the line between different lines. Yeah, whatever, that works. And you can mix and match. You can have them with other turtle figures. Now, granted, there's going to be differences, but like you can make some stuff work, and it's not that far of a stretch. I just really love and appreciate that about the Turtles line in general, but this line in particular is very good at that. And Leo in particular is another fine example of it. So you're going to be able to pose him with your Street Fighter figures. Of course, a lot of your Ninja Turtles figures he can go with them. And especially any comic-based figures. They can still work with the cartoon figures and probably some of the Archie figures, but any of your Mirage comics-based figures, these will definitely work in some capacity with whatever you're trying to do with them in photos and whatnot. And then I think they go well with Legends, and I think they go well with Street Fighter figures, and any other kind of line that you put them with, I think they'll probably work pretty well. I'm just looking at my shelf right now, and I think the only thing you might have issue with is probably some of the '87 animated series. Like, I'm looking at Screw Loose right now from that series, and yeah, it can work. It's just that it doesn't work quite as fluidly as a lot of the other things do. Again, I had a ton of fun posing and playing with this figure, and the joints are a little stiff here and there, but that's typical for NECA. Thankfully, I didn't have any breaks. The accessories are really cool. You know, I love having all the hands. That's great. But I did have issue with, and this was kind of across the board, the gripping hands for their weapons. That took a little finagling to get the weapons in there, and so much so that I kind of don't like taking them out because it's kind of a pain. But once they're in there, they're in there. So that's, you know, the good side to that. But I didn't really switch out a lot of the hands that much because they kind of sort of make a fist as they are the holding hands, and the open hands were a little too wide. Now, some of those hands are designed to hold the Microfission Omni Disintegrator, and they do. They work well to hold it, and that's great. But, like, you know, and you can use them for other things like different poses and whatnot if you want to, but, you know, your mileage is going to vary with that. The extra head is really cool. The closed eyes meditating head is great. I am a bigger fan of the pupilless head, which is awesome. However, I would have liked to have had a pupilled head as well, considering that we've got pupilled heads with Mikey, Raph, and Don. But, you know, it's not that big of a deal, especially considering they all have the pupilless eyes, which is the look that I would typically go for. The other accessories that come with all the turtles, the turtle com, the pizza, and the smoke bomb, those are fine. They're nice. I didn't have a lot of use for them, and I couldn't really get the hands to grip them the right way that was pleasing to me, which is a weird thing to say in a sentence. But again, your mileage is going to vary with that. The swords are awesome. They look great. They feel great, and they're sturdy. My only issue is that my sheaths, or scabbard, or whatever you call them, one of them, I think it's the bigger sword, I could be mistaken, the one that's on the back that is, well, they're both on the back, the one that is on top of the other, so there's one that's touching his shell, and then there's one that's attached to that. The one that's attached to the other sheath has like more like padding in it, for lack of a better term. Like the slit to be able to put the sword through is extremely tight and almost makes you feel like you're going to break the sword getting it in and out. So that's kind of irritating. But the other one, it fits like a glove. Like, it's perfect. Like it just no issues at all. But speaking of issues, let's go back to the heads. I had a terrible experience switching heads on these figures. Any of them. They were not easy to do. And I feel like I should have been able to put them on and have them stay and then be able to take them off a little bit easier than what they are. I don't know if that's going to be your experience, but that was my experience throughout all four of these figures. So keep that in mind. And then the articulation is great. It's got all of your standard modern adult collectible action figure articulation, double jointed knees and elbows, and it's just got a bunch of hidden articulation in the shell, which is really cool. So it allows for a lot more wiggle room and some subtle body language stuff that you can do, which is really neat. But the MVP, I think, again, of the articulation is definitely the ankle rocker and the big foot. That just makes these figures so good and so fun to play with. And I just can't say enough good things about that. So yeah, overall, huge fan of what Neca was able to do with this design, and I think they nailed it. He's a lot of fun to play with, goes with a lot of other things, and pretty much anything you're going to try to do, and he looks really cool on his own. So, you know, I don't think you can go wrong either way with this Leonardo action figure. So if you just collect Leonardos, then you already need this. If you collect famous fictional swordsmen, then Leo checks that box too. Or if you just collect the leaders of superhero teams, he's almost always that. Or if you just happen to collect action figures, with blue bandanas, then you will not be disappointed with Neca's Nickelodeon 2012 Leonardo. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments which version of Leonardo is your favorite, which of these 4 turtles was your favorite, and have you ever switched your fandom from one turtle to the next? Let me know in the comments, and until then, else time.